The morning sun rose slowly above the wide-open plains, painting the land in soft gold. Dust moved across the dry ground as the wind whispered through the tall grass. And in the middle of that quiet world rode a cowboy named Cole Dawson. Cole was known for taming the wildest horses in 3 counties. People said he had magic in his hands and calm in his eyes. But even he felt a spark of worry when he heard the news. A Mustang had escaped from the ranch on the far ridge, not just any Mustang, but the black one with the fire in its eyes. The one no one could get close to. The one that kicked fences and snapped ropes like thin twigs. The ranch owner had said, "Bring him back if you can." Cole had smiled, but inside he wondered what he was walking into. By noon he reached the rocky hill where tracks went in every direction. It looked like the Mustang had danced across the land. Leaving chaos behind, Cole dismounted and crouched low. Studying the ground with care, the hooves went west, then turned north, then circled back. "Smart animal," Cole muttered to himself. "Too smart." He followed the trail for hours, moving deeper into land untouched by fences or roads. At last the trail ended at a narrow stream where the water ran clear and cold. Cole stood still, listening to the quiet. Then he heard its soft steps behind him. Light as air, he turned slowly, careful not to startle whatever was watching him. But instead of the Mustang, he saw a girl. She stood on a rock above the water, her hair wild from the wind. Her clothes were dusty like she had run across miles of fields. She looked young, but her eyes held a fearless spark, the same spark he had seen in the Mustang. "You're tracking him wrong," she said with a small smile. Cole blinked in surprise. "And who might you be?" She stepped down from the rock with the grace of a cat. "My name is Lila," she said. "And that Mustang isn't lost." "He ran to me," Cole frowned, confused. "You're telling me you caught the wildest horse in the territory?" Lele laughed softly, like the sound of water touching stone. "I didn't catch him," she said. "He found me." Before Cole could speak again, he heard a sharp cry from the trees, the kind of sound only a free Mustang could make. Lila turned her head and whistled once. The bushes shook, and out stepped the black Mustang, proud and shining in the fading light. Cole's heart stopped for a moment. The horse stood calmly beside Lila, as if she had raised him from a foal. She placed her hand on his neck, and the Mustang lowered his head with trust. "How did you do that?" Cole asked, trying not to sound amazed. "I listen," she said. "Most people don't." Cole took a slow breath. He needed that horse back at the ranch, but he also knew forcing him would only cause more trouble. He studied Lila carefully, trying to understand the strange bond between her and the animal. "Why did he come to you?" he asked. "Because I don't tell him who to be," she replied. "I let him be wild." Cole looked at the Mustang, then at her. She was young, yes, but there was something powerful about her. Something the plains respected, something the Mustang trusted. "I need to bring him home," Cole said gently. "The ranch depends on him." Lila shook her head. "He won't go back to chains. He's tasted freedom." Cole touched the brim of his hat, thinking, "I'm not here to break his spirit," he said, "only to guide it." Lila studied him with narrow eyes, testing his words. At last she spoke. "There's a way," she said, "but you won't like it." Cole raised an eyebrow. "Try me. You must earn his respect like you would earn mine," she said. "No ropes, no tricks, no fear. Just you, him, and the truth." Cole felt a strange mix of challenge and excitement rise inside him. He nodded slowly. "All right." Lila stepped back and motioned to the clearing. Cole walked forward with calm, steady steps. He could feel the Mustang's gaze on him, sharp and full of warning. He whispered softly, letting the horse hear the peace in his voice. For a moment the world went silent. Even the wind held its breath. Cole reached out his hand, stopping just short of the Mustang's neck. The Mustang snorted, stepped forward, then back, unsure. But he didn't run. That alone felt like a small miracle. Lila watched from the shadows, smiling. She knew something the cowboy did not. The Mustang had chosen him already. But the cowboy needed to prove he was worthy. The sun dipped lower, turning the land orange and red. Cole stood tall, patient as stone. The Mustang moved closer, inch by inch. Trust was forming like a slow sunrise then. Just as the moment grew warm and full of hope, a gunshot cracked across the plains. The Mustang reared in fear. Lila gasped. And Cole spun around. Someone else was out there, and they weren't looking for peace. The cowboy wasn't ready for what came next. The gunshot echoed across the quiet plains like thunder. Birds burst from the trees. The Mustang bolted backward, and even the wind seemed to flinch. Cole grabbed the reins hanging at his side, not to catch the Mustang, but to steady himself. Lila's eyes flashed with fear and anger at the same time. "That wasn't a warning," she whispered. "Someone's hunting." Before Cole could answer, a tall figure appeared through a cloud of dust. A man on a horse rode forward with slow, heavy steps. He wore a dark coat despite the heat, and a bandana hid the lower half of his face. But Cole recognized the posture, the cold shoulders, the cruel confidence. It was Briggs Turner, a horse thief known across 3 states, a man who claimed anything wild as his own, a man who had once tried to burn down a ranch just because someone said no to him. Cole stepped in front of Lila without thinking. His voice stayed calm, but his hands were tense. "What do you want, Briggs?" he asked. Briggs lowered his bandana and grinned. "Well now," he said slowly, "I heard there's a black Mustang running free out here. And you know me, Cole. I never pass up something that belongs on my collection rope." Lila stepped forward, fire lighting her eyes. "He belongs to no one," she said sharply. "Least of all you." Briggs laughed, a rough sound full of mockery. "And who might you be, little wildflower?" he asked. Lila narrowed her eyes, but she didn't answer him. Cole kept his gaze steady on Briggs, ready for anything. "You fire that gun again, and the whole valley will hear it," Cole warned. Briggs shrugged. "Good," he said. "Let them hear." The Mustang snorted behind them, pacing nervously. Cole could feel the pressure rising in the air, like a storm about to break. Briggs leaned on his saddle horn, pretending to look relaxed. "I'm taking that horse," he said. "One way or another." Lila clenched her fists. "No, you're not," she said softly, but her voice carried strength. Briggs rolled his eyes at her, but Cole knew that look. Briggs never backed down unless someone forced him to. "You shouldn't have come here," Cole said. Briggs raised an eyebrow. "Why's that?" Cole stepped forward, boots firm on the dirt. "Because this land doesn't bend to men like you," he said, "and neither do we." For a moment Briggs said nothing. Then he kicked his horse, sending it charging forward. Lila gasped, but Cole moved fast. He grabbed a handful of dry dirt and threw it up into the air. The dust cloud burst right in front of Briggs' horse. The animal panicked and reared back, nearly throwing Briggs off. Briggs cursed loudly, trying to control his mount. Lila tugged Cole's sleeve. "We have to move," she whispered. "He won't stop now." Cole nodded. They hurried toward the trees where the Mustang had retreated. The Mustang watched them with wide, worried eyes. Cole placed a calming hand near the horse, not touching him but letting him feel his presence. "We need you," Cole said quietly. "Just for a moment." Lila stepped beside the Mustang and whispered something soft. The Mustang lowered his head, breathing out slowly. Then he turned, ready to run with them, not away from them. Briggs had regained control of his horse and was riding hard toward them. Cole grabbed Lila's hand. "Stay close," he said. 3 of them, man, girl, and Mustang, ran into the dense trees. Branches whipped past them. But the Mustang moved with perfect grace. He knew the land better than any map could show. Behind them, Briggs crashed through the woods, yelling threats. His anger shook the leaves. But Cole didn't stop running, not until they reached the riverbank, where the ground dropped suddenly. "We can't go forward," Cole said. "The water's too deep." Lila pointed upstream. "There," she said. "A narrow crossing." The Mustang moved first, stepping into the water with confidence. Cole followed with Lila close behind. Halfway across, they heard the crack of another gunshot. Water splashed near Cole's boots. Briggs had found them again. And this time he wasn't wasting bullets. The Mustang pushed harder, leading them to the other side. Cole and Lila climbed up the bank, breathing hard. Briggs shouted from across the river. "This ain't over, Dawson," he yelled. "I'll—" "Take what's mine," Lila turned and shouted back. "He'll never be yours." Briggs raised his gun to fire again, but at that moment, thunder rolled in the distance. Dark clouds gathered fast, covering the sky like a heavy blanket. The wind howled through the trees. A storm was coming, and it was coming fast. Cole looked at Lila and the Mustang. Danger wasn't over. It was only changing shape. And the cowboy still wasn't ready for what came next. The sky darkened faster than Cole expected. Thunder rolled across the plains like a giant waking from sleep. Lightning flashed in the distance, slicing the horizon with silver light. Lila pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders. "The storm will hide us," she said quietly, "but it will also test us." The Mustang snorted, shaking water from his mane, sensing danger in the air. Cole glanced back toward the river. Briggs had vanished behind the sheets of falling rain, but Cole knew he was still out there. A man like Briggs didn't give up, not even when nature itself fought him. "Come on," Cole said. "We need higher ground," Lila nodded, and they followed the narrow path leading up a rocky ridge. The Mustang moved with surprising calm, stepping around loose stones as if he had walked this path many times before. Cold rain soaked them within. Minutes, lightning cracked again, this time closer. The storm made it hard to think, hard to hear anything but the roar of the wind. At the top of the ridge they found a shallow cave, not deep enough to be a home, but strong enough to shelter them for a while. Coaxed the Mustang inside, then helped Lila sit near the back wall. Water dripped from their clothes and hair. For a moment, none of them spoke. Only the storm filled the silence. Finally, Lila looked at Cole, her voice soft. "He won't let this go," she said. "Briggs wants the Mustang because he wants power." Cole nodded, wiping mud from his hands. "And he thinks taking something wild will give him control," he said. "But wild things don't bend that easily." The Mustang raised his head as if agreeing. His dark eyes reflected the lightning outside. Layla reached out and touched his neck gently. "He's scared," she said, "but not broken." Cole watched the two of them together. He still didn't fully understand their bond, but he trusted it now. Something about Leela and the Mustang felt ancient and natural. "We should rest while the storm works in our favor," Cole said. But Layla shook her head. "No," she whispered. "He's coming." Cole froze. The wind carried a faint rhythm hoofbeats. Slow and heavy, not panicked like a wild chase, but steady, confident, dangerous. Briggs was close, too close. Cole crawled to the cave entrance and peered through the rain. Down below, barely visible through the storm, a dark figure moved across the lower path. Briggs was leading his horse on foot now, shielding it from the worst of the wind, determined, patient, relentless. "He's tracking us," Cole said. "Even through this mess." Leela stepped beside him, her eyes narrowed with fierce calm. "He thinks fear will make us weak," she said, "but fear can make people sharp." Cole looked at her with a mix of surprise and respect. This girl who seemed wild as the wind had more courage than many grown men he knew. Suddenly a loud crack echoed from above. A tree branch, split by lightning, crashed onto the ridge, sending rocks tumbling toward the cave. Cole pushed Leela aside, just as stones scattered across the entrance. Dust and noise filled the air. The earth trembled under their feet when the shaking stopped. Cole saw the problem. Rocks had sealed most of the cave mouth, not completely, but enough to slow their escape. "We're trapped," he muttered. Lila shook her head. "No," she said, pointing to a narrow gap between the boulders. "We can still get out, but he'll reach us before we do." Cole considered their options. Running would expose them. Hiding would trap them. Fighting seemed impossible. But then he looked at the Mustang, who stood tall and unafraid. "He's our strength," Cole said softly. "If we move with him, not behind him, we might just outrun Briggs." Lila placed her hand on the Mustang's muzzle. "We can do it," she whispered. The Mustang flicked his ears, ready. They pushed through the small opening, slipping out onto the wet ridge. The storm hammered them with wind and rain, but the Mustang led the way with steady steps. Cole followed. Close, guiding Lila with one hand. Then through the downpour came a voice. Cold, sharp, and far too close. "Thought you could hide from me?" Briggs shouted. He moved toward them with his gun raised. Rain dripped from his hat, but his eyes burned with fury. Cole stepped in front of Lila again. "Don't do this," he warned. Briggs laughed. "Oh, I'm doing it," he said. He aimed the gun at Cole. Lightning flashed, lighting up the ridge like day. The Mustang reared back, letting out a fierce cry that echoed across the plains, and in that blinding burst of light, Lila moved fast, fearless, wild. The cowboy wasn't ready for what came next. The lightning flashed again, bright enough to make the whole ridge glow white for a heartbeat. In that burst of light, Lila stepped forward, faster than Cole had ever seen her move. Her hand grabbed a sharp piece of broken branch from the ground. Briggs blinked, confused for a moment by her sudden movement. That moment was all she needed. She swung the branch at his arm, hitting his wrist hard enough to knock his aim off. Balance! The gun fired into the air, the sound swallowed by thunder. Briggs cursed, stepping back, surprised by her wild strength. Cole didn't waste the opening. He lunged toward Briggs, grabbing him by the coat and shoving him away from Lila. The two men slipped on the wet ground, their boots fighting for grip. Briggs pushed back with raw fury. "You think a little rain will save you?" he growled. Cole held his ground, muscles tight. "I don't need rain," he said. "I just need to stop you." The Mustang stood behind Lila, ears pinned, ready to protect her if needed. His wild eyes watched every movement, full of instinct and fury. Briggs swung a fist at Cole, hitting his jaw hard enough to send him stumbling. Cole wiped the blood from his lip, steadying himself, but Briggs didn't stop. He raised the gun again, even though his hand shook from Lila's strike. Lila saw the danger. She grabbed a loose rope from Cole's pack, one they had used earlier to secure supplies. Without hesitation, she tossed it toward the Mustang, not to tie him, but to signal him. The Mustang understood. He charged forward with a sharp cry. Briggs spun around too. Slow. The Mustang didn't hit him directly, but his powerful hooves crashed into the ground near Briggs. The impact sent rocks rolling and Briggs off balance. The gun slipped from Briggs' hand and clattered across the ridge, disappearing into the coda. Rain and mud. Briggs swore loudly, fury twisting his face. "You're going to regret that," he shouted. Cole stepped between Lila and Briggs again. "No," Cole said, breath heavy. "This ends now." Briggs lunged at him, grabbing Cole's collar. Cole pushed back. Both men fighting against the storm. The ridge was slippery, and their boots slid dangerously close to the edge. Layla watched in fear, hands shaking but eyes sharp. She saw the ground crumbling beneath them. If they kept fighting, both men would fall, and the drop was long enough to end any life. "Cole!" she shouted. "Move back!" But the wind stole her words, carrying them away. Briggs shoved Cole hard. Cole felt his heels slip off the edge. The world tilted beneath him. Rain blinded his eyes as his arms swung out for balance. At the last second, the Mustang charged again. He pressed his shoulder against Cole's side, pushing him just enough to save him from falling. Cole stumbled safely onto solid ground, breath shaking. He touched the Mustang's mane, whispering a grateful word. Briggs stared in disbelief. "That horse listens to you both," he said, voice trembling with rage. "That's not natural." Leela stepped forward, rain streaming down her face like tears she refused to let fall. "It's not magic," she said. "It's trust. Something you never learned." Briggs snarled and rushed toward her. Cole shouted and tried to block him, but Lila didn't step back. She stood her ground with fearless fire in her eyes. As Briggs came close, the Mustang reared high, his front hooves cutting through the air. Briggs slipped on the wet rock just as the Mustang came down, not on him, but beside him. The impact sent another tremor through the ridge. Briggs lost his footing completely. His arms swung wildly as he tried to grab anything to stop his fall. His fingers brushed a rock, then slipped away. With a cry lost in the roar of the storm, Briggs slid down the side of the ridge, not a deadly fall, but rough enough to knock him unconscious on the lower slope. Cole rushed to the edge. "He's alive," he said, "but he won't be waking up soon." Lila let out a shaky breath, relief washing over her like the fading rain. The storm began to calm, the thunder moving farther away. The ridge felt quieter now, almost peaceful. Cole turned to Lila. "You saved my life," he said. "Twice today," she smiled softly. "You saved mine first," she said, "and he saved us both." She placed her hand on the Mustang's neck. The horse lowered his head, proud but gentle. Cole watched them, feeling something shift inside him. He wasn't only protecting the Mustang anymore. He was protecting a bond he barely understood, something wild, something rare, something worth fighting for. As the last drops of rain fell, Cole looked down at Briggs lying far below. This fight was not over. Briggs would return when he healed, and he would return angry. But Cole also knew something new now. He wasn't facing the future alone. He had Lila by his side, and the Mustang strong. Loyal, untamed, whatever came next, they would face it together. And the cowboy still wasn't ready for how wild the journey ahead would become. The storm faded slowly, leaving the land wrapped in mist. Water dripped from the rocks in soft rhythms like the earth breathing again. Cole stood at the edge of the ridge, watching the clouds drift across the valley. Lila rested beside the Mustang, running her fingers gently through his damp mane. Her movements were calm, but her eyes held worry beneath their steady glow. She looked at Cole as he stepped toward her. "Briggs won't stay down for long," she said quietly. Cole nodded, wiping rainwater from his hat. "He'll wake angry," Cole replied. "And he'll come for us again," the Mustang snorted softly. As if agreeing, Cole let out a long breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on him again. They needed a plan, something smarter than just running. "We should head north," Cole said. "Toward the canyon trail." Lila's eyes widened slightly. "That place is dangerous," she whispered. Cole nodded. "Yes, but it's also the safest place to hide." The Mustang lifted his head, ears twitching with interest. Lila hesitated, then stood up and faced Cole. "You've been there before?" she asked. Cole looked toward the distant shape of the canyon, half hidden by clouds. "Once," he said. "Long time ago. That place taught me something important." Lila stepped closer, curiosity pulling her forward. "What did it teach you?" she asked. Cole paused, remembering the past. "That even the land has secrets," he said, "some that protect and some that warn." Lila glanced at the Mustang, then back at Cole. "Then we should go," she said. "There's no safety if we stay here." Cole mounted the Mustang lightly, careful not to startle him. But the wild horse accepted him without resistance, a sign of trust Cole did not take lightly. Lila climbed up behind Cole, holding onto his coat for balance. The Mustang stepped forward, moving with steady strength as they descended the ridge. The world smelled of wet earth and fresh wind. Down below, Briggs still lay unconscious on the slope, but Lila didn't look back. She knew the storm had given them only a small head start. They traveled north through narrow paths and thick trees. The Mustang guided them more than Cole did, choosing trails that seemed hidden from human eyes. Lila watched carefully, sensing that the horse knew exactly where he was going. After an hour, they reached the mouth of the canyon. Tall stone walls rose on both sides, carved by time and storms. Wind howled through the narrow opening, carrying echoes from deep inside. Lila shivered. "It feels alive," she whispered. Cole nodded. "It is," he said. "This land remembers everything." As they entered the canyon, the air grew cooler. Shadows stretched across the ground like long fingers reaching from the past. Yet the Mustang walked calmly, unafraid, guided by something old and unseen. Lila leaned forward, touching the horses. "Neck, he's been here before," she said. Surprised, Cole raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Layla nodded slowly. "He moves like he knows each step," she said, "like he's walking home." Cole studied the walls around them. Strange markings covered the stone, faded symbols carved by people who lived long before towns or ranches. He remembered seeing them as a young man. Back then he didn't know what they meant, but now, with Lila beside him and the Mustang leading the way, the symbols felt connected to their journey. They reached a narrow bend where the canyon opened into a hidden clearing. Sunlight broke through the clouds above, shining on wild flowers growing between smooth stones. Water trickled from a small spring, making the clearing feel peaceful. Almost sacred. Lila stepped down first, her eyes wide with quiet wonder. "This place," she whispered. "It feels like it belongs to him." She looked at the Mustang, who lifted his head proudly, breathing in the warm air. Cole dismounted and took a slow step forward. "When I was young," he said, "old ranchers told stories about a hidden place where wild Mustangs ran free. A place no rope could touch." Layla knelt beside the spring, her reflection rippling in the water. "He brought us here on purpose," she said softly. "He wanted us to see it." Cole crouched beside her. "But why?" he asked. Before Layla could answer, the Mustang let out a soft cry, not fearful, but alert. He turned his head toward the canyon entrance. Muscles tightening, Cole rose quickly. Hand on his belt, though he carried no weapon. Lila stood beside him, eyes sharp with worry. Footsteps echoed faintly through the canyon. Slow, dragging, familiar. Briggs had found them again, even after the storm, even after the fall. His stubborn rage drove him forward. Cole felt the air shift. The valley grew still. Even the spring seemed to quiet. Lila touched the Mustang gently. "We won't run," she whispered. "Not this time," Cole nodded. This place was sacred, wild, powerful. They would make their stand here together. And the cowboy wasn't ready for how the canyon would answer their fight. Briggs' footsteps echoed deeper into the canyon, each step bouncing off the stone walls like a warning drum. Cole stood tall, though his jaw tightened with worry. Lila placed a calming hand on the Mustang's neck, feeling the energy in the air shift like something ancient had awakened. The canyon felt different now. The wind no longer moved randomly, but in slow circles, brushing against them like a whisper. Even the spring at the center of the clearing rippled in strange patterns. Lila took a small breath. "This place is reacting," she whispered. Cole looked at her sharply. "Reacting? To what?" he asked. Lila hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "To us," she said. "To him," she added as she touched the Mustang gently. "And to the one hunting us." Cole didn't fully understand, but he trusted Lila's instincts more than logic here. He stepped forward, scanning the canyon entrance where Briggs' shape slowly appeared through the shadows. Briggs limped badly, his clothes torn from the fall, but his eyes burned with the same dangerous greed as before. He pointed an accusing finger at Cole and Lila. "You led me straight to it," he snarled. "The place the legends talked about." Lila stepped in front of the Mustang protectively. "You don't belong here," she said, her voice steady. Briggs laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "You think you do?" he mocked. Cole raised his hand, motioning for Briggs to stop. "You need to leave," Cole said firmly. "This canyon isn't safe for someone like you." Briggs lifted his chin with stubborn pride. "Oh, I'm exactly where I need to be," he said. He reached into his coat and pulled out a knife, sharper than the rocks around them. Cole tensed immediately, stepping closer to Lila. Briggs pointed the blade at the Mustang. "That horse is the key," he said. "He knows the path. He knows the power. And once I break him..." Before he could finish, the wind roared suddenly, drowning his words. The canyon walls vibrated like a giant heartbeat. Loose stones rattled across the ground, forming strange lines and shapes. Lila gasped softly. The Canyon is warning him, she whispered. Cole felt the hairs on his arms rise. Something old was moving, shifting, watching. Briggs looked around with growing confusion. What is this? He demanded. No canyon behaves like this. Lila stepped forward slowly. You're wrong, she said. This canyon protects what is wild. And he, she added, touching the Mustang gently, is part of it. Briggs shook his head, refusing to believe. He's just an animal, Briggs growled. And I will own him. The Mustang's ears flattened. His muscles tightened like a bow ready to release. He stepped in front of Lila and Cole, placing himself between them and the danger. Cole whispered to Lila, "We can't let Briggs provoke him into a blind attack." Lila nodded softly. "He won't," she said. "Not here," as if responding to her trust. The canyon floor began to glow faintly, not with fire, but with soft golden light seeping from old carved symbols in the stone. Briggs froze, eyes wide. What is happening?" he shouted. Cole stared in disbelief. "I've never seen anything like this," he whispered. Lila stepped forward until she reached the glowing symbols. She knelt, placing her hand on the warm surface. The light grew brighter, responding to her touch. "This canyon is a sanctuary," she said, "and it listens to those who respect it." The Mustang lowered his head, as if bowing to the land itself. A gust of wind circled him gently, lifting his mane like a crown of stormlight. Briggs stumbled backward, fear replacing anger, but the canyon didn't let him retreat far. A loud crack echoed behind him as a section of stone sealed the exit he came from. Briggs spun in panic. "You're trapping me?" he shouted at the canyon, as if it were alive. Layla shook her head. "You trapped yourself," she said softly. Cole stepped forward, voice steady. "No one controls the wild," he said. "Not you, not me." Briggs raised his knife again, desperation twisting his face. "If I can't have the horse," he yelled, "then none of you will." He rushed forward, but the canyon reacted first. The ground beneath him shuddered, rising like a wave of stone. Briggs lost his footing and tumbled hard, landing just inches from a deep crevice that had not been there moments before. He clung to the edge, terrified. "Help me," he shouted, voice cracking. Cole moved instinctively, but Lila grabbed his arm, stopping him. "The canyon is choosing," she whispered. "It's not our decision." The Mustang stepped toward the ledge, his eyes calm. He looked down at Briggs, then turned away. The canyon trembled once more, and the crevice slowly closed, leaving Briggs unconscious on solid ground. Layla let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. "It spared him," she whispered. Cole nodded. "But it warned him too," he said. The Mustang walked back to them, head lifted high. The glowing symbols faded gently, returning the canyon to silence. Cole looked at Lila. "There's more to this place," he said. "More to you," Lila lowered her eyes. "And more to him," she whispered, touching the Mustang softly. The cowboy still wasn't ready for the truth waiting in the heart of the canyon. The canyon grew quiet again, too quiet. No wind, no dripping water, no echoing footsteps. It felt as if the land itself held its breath, waiting for something to unfold. Cole knelt beside Briggs to make sure he was still breathing. The outlaw was unconscious but alive. The canyon had spared him, just as Lila said, but the warning in the land's trembling voice had been clear. Lila stood with the Mustang at the center of the clearing. Her fingers brushed gently against the horse's neck, and in the fading light, Cole noticed something he had never seen before. A faint marking glowed beneath the Mustang's wet coat. Not a brand, not a scar. It looked like a symbol carved from light itself, a swirling pattern of lines that matched the symbols on the canyon floor. Cole stepped closer, unable to hide his shock. "Lila," he whispered, "do you see that?" Layla did not look surprised. Instead, she nodded slowly, her eyes soft with understanding. "I've seen it before," she said quietly. Cole blinked. "Where?" he asked. Lila hesitated. Her breath shook as she searched for the right words. My mother told me stories, she said finally. Stories about a horse marked by the earth. A guardian born from wild winds and open sky. Cole frowned, trying to process her words. You think he's that horse? He asked. Leela shook her head gently. Not think, she said. No. She placed her hand on the glowing mark. The Mustang closed his eyes. Calm and trusting, when I was a child, she continued, I would dream of a black horse standing on a ridge surrounded by golden light. I didn't understand the dream then, but when I saw him years later, running free, I recognized him. Cole stared at her in quiet amazement. You knew he was special, he said. Lila nodded. More than special, she whispered. He's chosen. The Mustang lifted his head and looked toward the far end of the clearing. His ears twitched and his body stiffened. Cole felt a soft tremor beneath his boots, another warning from the canyon. What now? He muttered. Leela stepped beside him. The canyon reacts to danger, she said. And something else is coming. Cole placed a steady hand on the Mustang's shoulder. Not Briggs? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Lila shook her head. No, she said. Something older. The earth rumbled lightly. Not enough to frighten them, but enough to make the air feel heavy with memory. The canyon walls glowed faintly again. The symbols pulsed like slow beats of an ancient heart. Cole looked around uneasily. What is this place really? He asked. Leela walked toward the center of the clearing, her steps gentle but sure. It's a sanctuary, she said, but also a test. A test of what? Cole asked. Of worth, Lila replied. Of spirit. The Mustang walked toward the glowing symbols. As his hooves touched the stone, the light brightened. A warm wind rose around them, swirling like a living thing. Cole shielded his eyes. Feeling the energy whirl past him, Lila stood still, letting the golden air circle her without fear. The Mustang stood proud, mane lifting like a flame in the wind. Then, just as suddenly, the light faded, the canyon stilled, silence returned. But the mark on the Mustang now glowed brighter than before, its shape clear and sharp, a symbol of the canyon's approval. Cole swallowed hard. What does that mean? He asked. Leela turned toward him, her expression a mix of awe and sadness. It means the canyon chose him as guardian, she said. And guardians never walk alone. Cole felt his heart tighten. You? He whispered. Lila nodded. Yes, she said softly. I am bound to this place through him. But you can leave, Cole insisted. You don't have to stay here. Lila stepped closer, her voice gentle. I'm not trapped, she said. I'm connected. This place listens to me the way it listens to him. Cole looked away, struggling to process everything. He had thought Leela was just a mysterious girl with a wild heart, but now he saw she was something more, something rare, something tied to the land itself. The Mustang nudged Cole's shoulder, snapping him out of his thoughts. Cole touched the horse gently, feeling warmth beneath his palm. You both saved me more times than I can count, Cole murmured. The Mustang snorted softly, but before the moment could settle, a distant sound echoed through the canyon. Not footsteps, not wind, something deeper, almost like a call. Lila's eyes widened. That's not a threat, she whispered. That's a summons. Cole felt a chill travel down his spine. A summons for what? He asked. Leela looked at the Mustang, whose glowing mark pulsed again. For the next guardian, she said, and the cowboy wasn't ready for the truth waiting in the echo of that call.